Welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing, an inside look at foster care and adoption needs in Connecticut. My name is Jacqueline Ford. I have had the honor of working for the department for close to 30 years, and although I may be familiar with many of the topics I bring to you, I have invited experts in those fields to help dispel the myths and misconceptions that often act as barriers. Join us as we open our doors to an inside look at the Department of Children and Families. Caroline, thank you so much for being on Doors to Hope and Healing. I know I've wanted you on the show for a very long time, and I'm so excited that you're finally here. I think it's important because your story is extremely powerful, but it hasn't always been easy. And in a world that hasn't always been kind to you, you have taken that and you have persevered and you have been so resilient. And I want our viewers to see what you've done, and what an incredible life you have right now. So we're going to go through your journey from a teenager to this beautiful young woman that you are right now. So I'm going to take us back to 1998. 1998, you were born to a 15-year-old mom. Yeah. So your mom was a teenager. And due to some unfortunate life experiences, you received some services from the Department of Children and Families when you were young. Yeah. And you had your grandparents who were great, supports to you, and you were very close to your grandmother and your grandfather before he had passed away. Right. But what was it like being raised by your grandparents and having DCF involved with your life?
Yeah, so the beginning of time wasn't all that bad, and I think it was just not that bad because I was so little, didn't really understand the concept of what was going on. But like you said, I was born to a 15-year-old mother. She was super young, and her parents, thank God, stepped up and took me in. But unfortunately, they were struggling with addiction at the time, pretty bad. I lived in a household where there was no physical affection. There was no, let me help you with your homework. There was no, just no basic needs. It was, you can have whatever you want because we don't want you to bother us. We want to sit in the garage and we want to drink bottles and bottles and bottles of wine. That's what we want to do. We don't want you to bother us. And eventually it got to a point where, school noticed things were wrong. I was big in gymnastics. Gymnastics coaches started noticing things were wrong. I wasn't getting picked up from practice because I was just forgotten about and things like that. And that is ultimately when the department entered my life. And when they entered my life originally, I wasn't taken out of my house. I was still living with my grandparents, and they gave my grandparents the opportunity to kind of get it together. And at the time I didn't understand. Now I completely understand. But they just weren't ready. And that's okay. They just weren't ready. And I ultimately ended up getting taken and put into foster care.
And you always maintained a relationship with your grandparents.
Always,
they were
always
there for you.
Through everything. Through my first foster home placement, my first group home, my first residential, my first inpatient. They were there. They were there. They knew that they couldn't be there necessarily physically in a caretaker way, but they never once left me, if that makes sense. They never, they never left me to do it by myself in a sense. So that was always helpful.
So did they have a relationship with your foster family so that they could stay involved?
Yeah, so it was more so my grandmother, because my grandfather passed away when I was 12. And it had nothing to do with his alcoholism. He just got really sick, and that was just that. But my grandmother, even still in her addiction, was still very, very communicative with my worker at DCF, was very communicative with the therapists in the group homes, and she always made it a point to make sure that whether I was reaching out or not, she was always a part of everything.
And I'd just like to mention before we continue with your story, your grandmother is no longer
she's no longer an alcoholic. She's no longer, it makes me so happy. She's going on 10 years. Wow. It's a lot of years.
It sure is.
It's a lot of years, and it hasn't been easy for her, and I haven't made it easy for her. We have our qualms and things that don't make it easy, but she has stayed strong and stayed resilient, and she's my biggest inspiration. I love that lady.
And being healthy,
right,
and being present, she could be present in all that you're experiencing and all that your son is experiencing.
Yeah, that's another big thing. Yeah, is her being sober has definitely opened a lot of doors when it comes to my son. They have such an amazing bond and such an amazing relationship.
Having had an incredible relationship with my grandmother, your story has always been very tender to me. So I get it. I totally understand. So then your story continues. When you were 15 years old, you became pregnant.
I did.
So tell us about your pregnancy.
So when I was 15, I got pregnant with my daughter, Miss Peyton, and I was in the care of the department at the time. So I was given one choice and one choice only, and that choice was to go to St. Agnes Home. St. Agnes Home is no longer, but they were a really good program that worked hand in hand with the department. Essentially, a very nice building in West Hartford. They provided, anything you could need. Shelter, they provided anything for your baby that you needed. Support from caseworkers, nurses, 24-hour staff, just kind of set you up to be great.
And this was for pregnant
for pregnant teen moms. And they worked mostly with the department. So there was girls there that weren't involved in the department, but more so everyone was involved with the department. And when I first had Peyton, things were okay. I lived at St. Agnes. I did what I had to do as a mother, but I always felt like something wasn't right. Now I know it as postpartum depression. I was young. I had no idea what that was. I had no idea that you could have a baby and not instantly be connected and not instantly be in love. I didn't know that was normal. I didn't know that could happen, and that happened to me. And I ultimately, for the safety of myself and for the safety of my daughter and for, the benefit of her and the wellness of her life in the long run, I had to make the decision that was probably one of the hardest of my life, and that was just to throw my hands up and say that I can't do this right now. And there's probably somebody in this world that would love to be able to do this right now. There's somebody in this world that wants a daughter, that wants a baby to take care of, and that can provide way more than I can, and not even necessarily physically, emotionally. I was 15, it was more so I wanted to be loved. That's what it was. I wanted to be loved in this world of just being tossed around and no stability, Of course I wanted to have a baby. Of course, I wanted somebody to love me. But I know now that was the best decision I could have ever made in my whole entire life. I know now that she's thriving, that she has anything that her little heart desires. She's doing great things. She's in ballet. She's doing all these things that I just know that I wouldn't have been able to provide her.
But that was a very brave decision to make as a child. You were a child yourself, and to make that decision, was very courageous and selfless of you to do. And I know that you'll share a little bit more about her as your story continues, and how, our steps are numbered, and, how your life was supposed to happen has happened.
Right.
So you made the decision to put her up for adoption.
Yep.
And you were young and you were wise. And then you didn't know who the person was that had adopted your baby at the time.
Right. It was a closed adoption.
It was a closed adoption. Yeah. So tell us about, I want our story to kind of, you became involved with the Department of Children and Families.
I did.
As a mom.
I did.
Because you became pregnant.
Yep.
With your second child.
With my second child, with my son.
So let's start there. So tell us a little bit about that.
So when I got pregnant with my son, I was 21. Mm-hmm. I was definitely in a more stable position. Can't say that I was the absolute 100% most stable person in the whole entire world, because who is?
But it was different than when you were 15.
Way different. When I was pregnant with my son, however, I got this morning sickness that, 1 in a million girls deal with. It's called hyperemesis, and I was sick, very, very, very sick. I spent months of my pregnancy in the hospital on feeding tubes. I just couldn't keep anything down. It was horrible. And I made such a not hot decision, and that was to engage in smoking weed while I was pregnant. Definitely wasn't my smartest idea, but in the moment, that's what was helping me. That's what was helping me eat. That was helping me sleep. And push came to shove, and I had my baby. And after I had my baby, probably about 48 hours later, got a knock on the door, and
you were home at this point,
I
right?
was at the hospital.
Okay, so they came to the hospital.
They came to the hospital about 48 hours after I had him, and I'll never forget it. Miss Tammy Bailey, love that woman to pieces, but she came and she knocked on the door, and it was just a feeling of I already know. I already know what this is. You don't even have to say who you are. I already know. I knew. And sure enough, my name is Tammy, and I just want to let you know I'm here to open an investigation. And the smoking weed, it's, and it was valid. It was valid. And there was already lots of reservations about me. One thing about me is I'm very well versed with the department. The department knows me from my worst to my absolute best. They've known me since I was 12 years old. I'm 24 now, so there was a lot of people who had this idea that my baby was going to be taken, and that was just going to be that because of how I used to act, or my mentality, or my lack of ability to grow up. But they were wrong. They were.
Well, you said at that time, I remember you telling me, because I've been blessed to have many interactions with you, and you're such an inspiration to me. But I remember you telling me when I first met you that you experienced such profound joy and such deep loss at this moment. Yeah. Can you explain what that felt like?
Yeah. So I felt the loss because I knew in my heart, in my soul, that I had made the changes to be able to keep this baby and keep this baby successfully and love this baby. And I knew that, but I also knew that I had a very tough battle ahead of me. And that's where the kind of joy also hit me at the same time, because I knew that I was going to prove all of these people wrong. I knew that all these supervisors and caseworkers and all these people who had all of these meetings with me, and and it wasn't even necessarily them trying to scare me. It was more so just laying down a very firm expectation. You're going to do what we say, or you're not. And I think that's the biggest thing of this whole entire journey that I've been on with the department, is that when you want something enough, it doesn't matter what anyone says. So the department walks into my house and says that the sky is orange, and I'm like, you're right, it is. I'm not gonna argue with you, I'm not gonna fight with you, I'm not. And as soon as I did that, my whole entire life changed.
Well, you were given a second chance. I think that given your history and, you know, the difficult start you had in life made some people doubt if this was going to work.
Absolutely.
So when Carter was placed into foster care, where was he placed?
So God works in very mysterious ways. So it was crazy. My son was placed into a foster home, and one day he came to my house, and the visiting aide kind of looked at me and was just like, "Your daughter is beautiful." And I'm like taken back, haven't heard anything about my daughter.
And how old is she at this time?
She's 4.
Okay.
So I haven't heard about her in 4 years. And this visiting aide is going on. She loves to dance. She loves to this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you didn't know? And I'm like, no, what? And she's like, that your son is placed with your daughter. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm like so shell-shocked. I'm like, what? And you know, and then the conversation proceeds into, she loves him. She knows that that's her brother. She knows, you know, all these things. And I'm like, still just stuck, you know what I mean? And that, around that time, so I got my son back in October. And
how many months was he in foster care?
he was only in foster care for a little over 6 weeks. So he was only in foster care for a little over 6 weeks. Definitely a huge accomplishment for me.
But it was an accomplishment for you because you were willing to accept services in your home.
Right. Yeah. So I worked very closely with a program called FBR, Family-Based Recovery, and it's very intensive, and it will test your limits and your patience. And because it's 3 different, you're working with a caseworker, you're working with a drug counselor, and you're also working with a normal therapist, and they all come at different times, and you know, it eats up a lot of your time. But I can honestly say, if it wasn't for FBR, I wouldn't have been able to show the department as quickly as I did. You know what I mean? It's easier to prove to them, you know, you want to offer me this service. Yes, it's 4 times a week, but that gives you a inside glimpse of what really goes on. You know, you have these people reporting to the department in your favor. You know, all you have to do is just do what you have to do. And I struggled with that for a really long time.
I'm sure you did.
I struggled with that for a really long time. I struggled with the fact that I wasn't always right. That was like crazy to me. How am I not always right? That was insane. This doesn't make sense. But once I got over that speed bump and I realized you're not always right, life is just so much smoother.
Sure.
You know?
And you had that support for all that time. So now DCF has this program in your home, and they work with you for how many months?
So we worked together for a total of, so my son got placed back with me in October, and then they closed in December.
Okay.
Yeah.
The program closed in December?
Yep, the program closed in December.
And then we closed our case, it'll be 3 years in August, right?
Yeah, 3 years in August.
So let's go back a little bit. So that December of 2019, you received a beautiful gift.
I did.
What was that gift?
Oddly enough, it's Christmas Eve, and I am at my grandma's house, and random as day, my phone starts to ring. It's like 7 o'clock at night, and my phone starts to ring, and I'm like, and I look down at the phone, and I don't recognize the number, and I'm like, okay, and I answer it, and it's Wanda, my daughter's foster mother.
Who has adopted her. This is her adopted
she's adoptive.
Mom.
Yeah, that's her mother now. And it was her, and it was a very simple conversation, and it was just, I know this is weird for you, me calling you. And I was unsure, like, you know, what to say. And she's like, I know this is very last minute, but I was just wondering if you would be at all interested in coming and coming to my house to see Peyton. And I just instantly, you know, started crying, and I felt just this sense of, you know, accomplishment. That's really what I felt like. This woman who had this crazy outlook on me, only because of myself, only because of things that I was doing, has now invited me into her home on Christmas Eve because she was able to see my son placed with her and also placed back with me. And I know that that's what showed her that I was not that same 15-year-old little girl. You know, I wasn't that immature. You know, I wasn't going to fight with her anymore. I wasn't going to, you know, I wasn't going to do all of these things. I just wanted her and my daughter to be happy, you know, because that's all that they both deserve. Wanda has helped me in immense ways, in ways that she doesn't even know. You know, she's a blessing. She's a blessing to this earth. She is a blessing to me. She's a blessing to my son who loves her. You know, if it wasn't for my son being taken, I wouldn't have a relationship with my daughter.
No,
you know, I wouldn't be able to see her once a month. I wouldn't be able to, you know, call her on FaceTime when I wanted to. You know, I wouldn't be able to listen to her chat my ear off about ballet or, you know, all of these things that I honestly never thought that I would be able to do when it came with her. So, you know, I definitely feel that the department has played a huge, huge role, and whether I saw it or not in the moment, as much as it was me putting in the work, it was also those people who, you know, struggled with me for so long, giving me that second chance, you know, like Miss Minerva and all of those people who, you know, we struggled. We had a rough couple of years there, you know, and I'm just blessed now that I can email a DCF worker and just ask a question.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Or call Jackie because I need help with something in the community. You know what I mean? Like it's such a different outlook that I have now. You know, growing up, you have this horrible, but once you get over the whole I'm not always right thing, it's
Look at you.
Yeah.
Well, I am so proud of you, and it was an honor for me to be able to write your story almost 3 years ago,
I
but
know.
it's even more of an honor for me to still be a part of your life and to be able to provide you with some help and supports through the agency whenever I possibly can.
Yeah.
But before we close, I want you to tell our viewers about your life right now.
Oh.
I'm so proud of all that you're doing as a young mom. So tell us a little bit about where you've landed.
So right now, I am working as an administrative assistant at a dental office, and I am currently going to school for dental assisting. And I've had lots of help with my job right now, kind of, you know, getting hands-on at work, which has been super great. Kind of just building back up bonds with my family, and most of all, taking care of myself. You know, going to therapy, you know, getting my hair done, things that I, you know, didn't necessarily find important that are really important now.
And self-care is so important.
Absolutely.
And you have your own apartment.
Yes.
You're on your own.
I'm on my own apartment, own car, own job. All these great things that I never thought would happen.
And you're wise beyond your years. You know, you're 24 years old and you've had so many difficult and exciting life experiences, but I'm so honored. I truly am so honored to be able to help tell your story from, the adoption decision that you made, to parenting Carter and being in your daughter's life, that never would have thought would ever have happened. So it is just a pleasure to have you here. So I look forward to following your story and staying involved with you.
Absolutely.
I know that you'll be working with some of our youth,
I
our
sure
teens,
will.
On financial health and literacy and how
Important it is. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cannot wait.
And you are a great influence because you can share with our young people how difficult that trajectory of your life was, and to look at you now, and that will give them inspiration.
Absolutely.
So I'm just loving that we're going to continue to work together.
Yes, so exciting.
But thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, honey. So now we're going to introduce you to one of our Heart Gallery children who are looking for their forever home. Thank you for watching.
Foster parents that try and stay away from youth with run-ins with the law, I believe, need to see that those youth are in more need of someone to talk to, of someone to listen, of someone to be there because of the situation that they are in.
Don't restrict them just because you think of their history. Think that they would want to, feel like they're a part of the family.
It's important to remember that no matter what you read on a piece of paper, it doesn't mean that's who's in the inside. By you judging what's on that paper, you're only causing more harm to the child. Let that child show you who they are, not what a piece of paper says about them.
Don't treat them based on their past.
Always let them know that no matter what happens here, you're coming home. I love you. You're great. You're a great individual. Your actions do not define you. You can always change them. You can change your future because of that.
Every foster youth has a history behind them. We all have our own stories, but our stories do not define who we are. It really matters what we do with our story.
Yes, it gives you an understanding of what they may have gone through, but that doesn't mean that's who they are.
They deserve the opportunity to turn their lives around.
When you're fostering a kid, you're fostering them. You want to bring them up, so you have to get to their level and help them grow.
And that really solidifies what we're going to become. And foster parents can help us by understanding that, yes, we have a long history, but meet me where I'm at right now.
I believe that foster children should get a second chance.
Foster parents can be that second chance.
Sometimes life just happens. Don't worry. Farmington Motorsports will get you back on the road and at a fair price. From towing to tires, emissions to transmissions.
Our ASC certified techs do it all.
Farmington Motorsports is a family-run business. We're a Napa Auto Center and AAA approved. We work on all makes and models from preventative maintenance to major repairs.
And every repair is backed by our 2-year, 24,000-mile nationwide warranty.
When life happens to you, don't worry. Farmington Motorsports.